just got word. Yochanan ben
Oh,
Rachel
Yochanan.
Perel.
Say that
Yochanan ben
again?
Rachel Perel, a young
I say
man,
every day.
maybe 50-something years old, who's going through radical surgery, moving his stomach, parts of his liver, parts of his diaphragm, and it should only be from here on in. Okay, we're in a very important little transitive time right now. We just completed Sefer Bamidbar. We're getting Sefer Devarim this week. We're still in the afterglow of Bamidbar. It'll be Monday. It was Parsha Hazak. It was the Parsha in which the Jewish people were, for the first time since Pesach, united on the same page, or shall I say, on the same Parsha. We once discussed this a couple months ago, that the last day of Pesach here in Israel was in the Schwartz was Shabbos, but in Eretz Yisrael it was Friday, going right into Shabbos. So we read the following week's Parsha. We began our journey through the Midbar, a step ahead of all the Jews anywhere else in the world. Now, that could have been rectified almost immediately, like Achiros Kedoshim. They could have doubled up on Parshios, however, the halacha and prevailing custom among all communities and all of Klal Yisrael is not to do that, which is pretty impressive. And the only unification was done right now before the book of Devarim. So the question is why? Why did it emerge that we had to wait from Pesach? Now, we could have also reunified, which would have been logical, before Shavuos, which is at the end of Vayikra, which is a very common to have a double parsha at the end of Vayikra, and start Midbar as a Jewish people united at Har Sinai. Wouldn't you have expected that? Not this year. This year it waited all the way until Parsha Devarim. Why? That's question number one. Question number two.
You mean this week?
This week, this past Shabbos, 2 days ago, the Chutzlarts read a double parsha, Matas
and
Maseh,
caught up with us.
close to 250 psukim, very long day in shul. We had half of that. We read Parshas Maseh only, so we're caught up.
So
Now they're caught up to us. So why? What was the reason why there was this halachic delay? What's the meaning behind it? And if we don't get together for Matan Torah, which would have been right before Shavuos, Parshas Bamidbar, we could have ended Vayikra together and started Bamidbar together. No. Bamidbar, we went the entire Bamidbar separate until the very last step, separated from Chutzlarts. And then plus, of course, it creates a lot of problems. Because if you traveled from America to Israel, what happened to you in terms of Shabbos?
Well, Mr.
And then you go back to America the following week, right? You got messed up. If you stay for a while, you're even more messed up. And if you go from Israel to America, you're going to go and hear a parsha that you've already heard, right? And then when you come back, let's say the next week to Israel, you'll have missed what your fellow Eretz Yisrael Jews had already read. So it's very, very, it creates almost a separation between the Jewish people. Okay?
Gotta plan your trips.
It's like a wall. A wall was designated between the Jews of Chutzlarts and the Jews of Eretz Yisrael, only to be reconciled now. Question number one. Question number two, we'll take a look at the fact that Devarim is always, by Chazal, the parsha that immediately precedes the 9 days. Devarim and the 9 days are always connected. This year, Rosh Chodesh was on a Friday. Beis Av, technical beginning of the Avelus of the 9 days, is now manifest in an open way. Right, restrictions on showering, bathing, cleaning clothing, certainly on basar v'yayin, which is the minhag of the Ashkenazim. Of course, to be a Sephardi, you get off easy because they don't have any restrictions this year, because since Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, everything is, there is no week of Tisha B'Av. You understand why? Because the week begins with Shabbos. And in other words, excuse me, the first day of the week is Tisha B'Av. So where's the week of Tisha B'Av? There is no week. The first day of the week is Tisha B'Av. Get it? So there's no Shavua Shechal Bo. And the Sephardim
They don't have an
only observe
idea.
the week of Tisha B'Av. It's the Ashkenazim who live much more miserable lives, who back up all the way to Rosh Chodesh Av, and consonant with the miserable exile of the Christian world that they always had to endure, which is far worse in many ways, as we know. Okay, so, and I'll share a story about that today. So, about how Jews were able to influence their Arab leaders, rulers, and how also in the Christian world you're able to do it, but only through one method and one method only. What's the only way to time-honored wisdom of the Jewish people, going back to the days of Yaacov Avinu? The only way you will ever get a Gentile to do something extraordinary for a Jew is through a bribe. A bribe. That's why Yaakov sends to Esav a massive amount of money. And it did work. It softened them up tremendously to such a point where that's really what won the day. If you think it was because all of a sudden he loves Yaakov, he said, Yesh li Rav, I've got a ton, and I wouldn't mind just a little bit more. And it will always work even with the most vicious Nazis. The only way that they could ever engage them, and I'll tell you a story about that too. Right, but that was the only thing that could even work, could ever work. Even with Amalek themselves. You see that Amalek has a soft spot for money. How do you know? Because what does Haman do? Haman tells the Melech, don't worry about the money, I'll give you all this money, let me have the Jews. What was he afraid of? Someone will come with money from the Jewish people and try to bribe the Jews, bribe Achashverosh to free the Jews from Haman's decree. So he said, I got you already. It was a preemptive strike on anybody coming forward. That's my own interpretation. Preemptive strike saying, what's going to change your mind? Money? Don't worry about the money. Okay. So let's get into the Parsha, and then we're going to get back to contemporary stories of how the money saved, but not just the money. Something else was needed on our end. Okay, so let's do a quick review of Parshas Matos Maseh. We don't know Parshas Maseh. We're not prepared to enter Dvarim. Dvarim is the book of Eretz Yisrael, entering the land of Israel, of conquering the Khurban, of going through the 9 days and seeing it transform from a Khurban to a Yom Tov, from the Avel le Yom Tov. The night of Pesach will invariably, the weeknight of Pesach is always identical with the weeknight of Eicha. In other words, we had a Friday night Seder. We will have, it should have been a Friday night Tisha B'Av, correct? It is. It just gets pushed off to Sunday because we can go fast on Shabbos. Okay? But it's always the same. Haggadah is the exact opposite of Eicha. That doesn't mean, that flip sides are flippable, meaning that there's much more of a connection between Tisha B'Av and Seder night than you might think. Which is why in the Megillas Eicha, what is it called? Kara alai moed lishbor bahurai. It's called a yontif, based on this. What yontif? Yontif to break our chosen sons, or our chosen nest, if you want to say. Right? And that's a yontif? Yeah, it's a yontif. Either because it will be a yontif, or as Rav Gifter explained, because it is a yontif. Moed means vad. Vad, what's a vad? What is a vad? A gathering, a communal experience, right? Anytime there's a unique day which Hashem and the Jewish people share a communal experience together, the Seder night is a rendezvous between Hashem and the Jewish people in a profound way. So too is the night of Eicha. What is the rendezvous? What is the unique kesher between Hashem? What is the unique chosenness? Well, Hashem took out his anger on Eitzim va'avanim and did not destroy the Jewish people out of his never-ending love for them. So Tisha B'Av is the testimony of the enduring love between Hashem and the Jewish people, despite all suffering and hardship and galut and exile. Who goes into exile with us? Hashem. And if you come tomorrow night, you'll see that not only Hashem goes into exile, but what else goes into exile? The Torah. Okay? The Torah goes into exile. If you want to understand, because it's all one. Yisrael, ve'oraita, ve'kudshabrichu, echad. If the Jewish people and the Shekhinah are in exile, by definition, Torah is in exile. We'll find out a little bit. And wisdom, because all wisdom is dependent on Torah.
Now that the Jews are in Israel, a lot of Jews, so this, does he divide his time, so to speak?
That's an excellent question.
What?
What is Hashem splitting his time between Hashem and the Jewish
I
people?
don't know.
And the answer is yes. Yes. Because it says, Chomokom asher askir es shemi, avo elecho v'rachticha. There are embassies of Shekhinah all over the world. Every Chabad house, and every shul, and every yeshiva, and every place where they keep Shabbos and Yontif and Parsha and Mishpacha and everybody who opens up a sefer and learns a word of Torah, there's a Shekhinah is partially there. But ultimately, those places are deriving their koach only from Eretz Yisrael. So the answer is yes. Okay. Anyway, let's look at this. Who remembers what happened in Parshas Matos? So, and what happened? Well, let's start with Parshas Maseh. That's a little bit easy. Parshas Maseh, what we just read, was divided into the following segments. Right? What was the first thing? The Masot. The stations with which we traveled through the Midbar. Each one of them is recalled, correct? 42 stations. What else does our Parsha have?
Cities of refuge.
The idea of cities of refuge and how we take on the challenge of a Rotzeach. The word Rotzeach appears again and again and again and again. Retzach, Retzach, Retzach. All the laws of Ritzicha. Now, and the Eir Miklat is the now. Okay, so here I'll give you a key right away. How many Eir Miklats were there?
6.
What's a multiple of 6?
36.
42. Now, how many other cities were given? How many cities were given to Levium? How many cities did they get? Also in this Parsha? 48. 40. The 6 Eir Miklats plus, as they say in Israel, 42. So what's the significance of 42? Okay, 42 Masaos. Notes our Shiur, 42 ears of Levium, in addition to the 6 that were designated by Moshe on Hayarden-The. And who does the ones inside Eretz Yisrael? Yehoshua. Interesting. 3 Moshe, 3 Yoshua, 3 Hayarden-The. There's a split. 3 and 3. Now, how many tribes are on the other side?
2.5.
2.5. Okay, and how many does that leave if you want to include Levi in the mix? 9.
9.5.
Okay. So, why are there so many people with only 3 cities? In Eretz Yisrael, we have 9 plus tribes and only 3 official Ari Miklat. Whereas on Hayarden-The, we have 2.5 tribes. We have more than 1 Eir Miklat per tribe. If that,
That's
Because of the influence.
they
makes you
need
wonder.
that. Why do they
Wait,
need
Philip.
that? Okay,
Well,
The fathers
They're
were
more
away.
killers.
that's
They
correct.
were away helping the other tribes in the wars, so they didn't have their influence of their fathers.
That could be, that is also an
Oh,
interesting.
that's interesting.
Baruch HaTorah.
I mean, the kids grew up without a father figure.
Right.
Yes, hold on to that point. The lack of a father, or the absence of a father,
Even with Moshe Rabbeinu?
is something that can lead to Retzach. And we'll see why.
What is Rex?
Murder. So it was a murderous territory, was it not?
Not.
So if it's such a murderous territory,
Yeah.
who needs it? And what was the motivation of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven to get that land? Well,
Sheep.
They were
I mean,
fertile.
come on.
Well, Moshe
Pasture
buried it.
land.
They want to be
Come on.
Moshe buried.
Right.
Okay. But let's look at it on the surface first. Let's ask the question. What it says in the pasuk is that they had mikneh rav, and when they come to Moshe, they offer to build pens for their animals and then cities for their children. And Moshe gives them mussar.
He
What are you
reversed.
talking about? What's wrong with you? Why in the world were Bnei Gad and Reuven so focused on their mikneh? We spent 40 years in the desert eating mun. Right? Didn't that teach you the principle that
Bless you.
the source of Parnasa is Hashem? And you're going into the land of Israel, which is the place where Einei Hashem is always on, which is the similar experience to what you had in the desert. I mean, it's better than the desert. The desert only has Nachashim and Akravim. It only has snakes and scorpions and unbearable heat and suffering. Now you're going into a land that's not that bad. Look how pretty, how beautiful it is. And that's now. Can you imagine what it was like then? What in the world were Reuven and God thinking? And that the Torah recorded it and then Moshe went along with it? Why? This is like not to be believed. The next question.
Yeah, why don't you say, why don't you read and see what's available on the other side?
Yeah, they don't even want to. Yeah, that's another question.
What was the question?
They rejected all of Eretz Yisrael. They don't even take a look at it. Gee, what does that remind you of? Rejecting Eretz Yisrael. What does Moshe accuse them of doing?
Exactly that.
Wait a second. Moshe accuses them of being like the Meraglim. The Meraglim came back and said that the land of Israel is not conquerable by human devices, or even more than human devices.
But they didn't say it wasn't Eretz
Who?
Right.
At least they did say that.
They did say
They said it wasn't?
They said it was.
Oh, right.
So, and they don't even care about Eretz Yisrael. They're worried. But one second. The Meraglim dissuaded the Jewish people from going over because of fear. What does that have to do with Bnei Gad and Reuven? They just want a convenient place for their animals. How could Moshe accuse them of being as bad as the Meraglim?
What does
What are
he
you
say?
talking about? What does that mean, bad as the Meraglim?
They didn't want to do any of the fighting. Peaceful.
He says you are saying it's because of your who you are as a family and your shepherds and so on. But everybody's going to say, yeah, right. The real reason they don't want to go is because they're afraid. And that's why when they came forward and said, not only are we not afraid, but we're going to leave the battle, that quieted Moshe down. But if not for that, it was fear. Fear of going into the battle. The fear of the battle.
Not knowing if it's worth it.
Correct. Now we just said something very profound. Eretz Yisrael requires what?
Suffering.
Be tough on it. Tough.
Is to conquer your fear of the battle. Eretz Yisrael requires a, ironically, chalutzim mentality. Not that I'm giving them, kudos, but on the one hand, they were not afraid. And that is the great, great thing about the chalutzim for all of their hitnagdut to anything else about Torah mitzvahs. When it came to the mitzvah, ahavas Eretz Yisrael, they were unparalleled. And who knows in Hashem's eyes, how that gets measured? Who knows? I mentioned to you, I'm reading the biography of Rabbi Shlomo Goren. Okay. There were two people in Rabbi Shlomo Goren's life that he emulated and considered very, very dear to him. Okay. One was, as you can understand, a rabbi, a rabbinic figure. He revered Rav Kook. He revered Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was his hero. Yeah, was his hero. And at the same time, his closest ally was who? You'll never guess. He was close to the Chazon Ish. He went to Chazon Ish for some very difficult questions. His posek, even though he was a genius of a posek himself, beyond, but when he wanted to speak about a shiloh that even he was concerned that he didn't have a solution for, he consulted with Chazon Ish, including the following Shiloh. Non-Jews that died fighting along Jews. There were volunteers who fought with the Haganah, whatever, 48. And now their bones are all mixed up. And one of the most important, in fact, the most important job of the Israeli military rabbinate is what? Bury the dead. Retrieve the dead and bury them. That's, now they think everybody thinks Zaka. But Zaka has a good idea, because that is a sign of great, great, great courage. But what if you're going to go get non-Jewish bones? What are you going to do with them? Halakha isn't allowed to bury non-Jews in the cemetery. So Chazon Ish said, collect all the bones, and when you bury them, just say, Al Tanai, that I'm burying the Jewish bones, and whatever's not Jewish should be considered as nothing. Chazon Ish's solution. And he also gave a head to Rabbi Goren that non-Jews who died fighting for Israel could be buried in the Israeli military cemetery, but in a separate section. But in a separate section. But that was to accord military honors to a Jew. So you understand, it's buried or to whoever it was. Okay, I could give hours of this, and I'm going to speak a little bit about Ishba, maybe a little bit about Ish Kodesh at the end of the day. But I'll just mention the courage to go into the battle. Courage to go into the battle. So, the battle for Yerushalayim was fought on the next to last day of the 6-day war. Okay? And there was originally a decree not to conquer the old city. And who was Goren's nemesis, by the way? Nemesis, but ultimately sang his praises. Two very famous generals. No, I didn't say. His ally in all things, Ben-Gurion.
Yeah, I know it was that.
Okay?
I meant
Whenever Rabbi Goren wanted to accomplish something and it was deemed not acceptable by his arch nemesises, Moshe Dayan, and to a lesser extent Ariel Sharon, who became his big Hasidim afterwards, to whatever extent they became his Hasidim. He went over their heads, he got permission from Ben-Gurion, and Ben-Gurion always backed him. Because one thing Ben-Gurion did have was incredible courage. And the story goes that when the partition plan was voted, and then it came the question about whether to accept it and declare the state of Israel, his general said to him, two things. First of all, he asked them, what are our odds of winning? And they said 50-50. Okay? And he says he walked over to the window and he thought for a few minutes and he goes, we'll declare the state. It's the best odds we've had in 2,000 years. So he was willing to risk life. That is the courage of war, to lose everything.
They weren't afraid to leave their family, open to the people could have attacked them.
Well, not open. They built fortified cities, but still. So I imagine they left behind a certain amount of people to defend. They just sent their best soldiers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. They didn't send everybody. They sent select their top soldiers. Instead of defending their people, they went ahead and participated in Chalitzim. So the other thing that they said about Ben-Gurion, he says we should just not battle for Yerushalayim. Just keep this Tel Aviv and coastline, and that's it, because you'll never do it. He said there's no such thing as a Medina Israel without Yerushalayim.
And they came back with
So fast forward to 1967, where Ben-Gurion was still alive, by the way. Ben-Gurion was still alive in 67. And he, in the 67 war, the original decision of the generals, let me just tell the story. Let me tell the whole story, okay? I'll tell you the story. It's another good story. How did Rabbi Goren become the chief rabbi of the IDF? How did it happen? Well, he was a genius in learning. In Yerushalayim growing up. His parents had made Aliyah from Poland, and they came here, and his father had a craziness that he's going to drain the swamps. And the whole family almost died of typhoid and malaria. It was a Haredi colony that came from Europe, came from Poland. And, they came here and all they found was swamps and malaria and mosquitoes and all kinds of dangers and shady dealings, and nevertheless, they persevered. Ended up moving to Yerushalayim, and he, as a bachur, wrote a sefer at the age of 16, which is considered a masterpiece. At age 16, he was the youngest student ever admitted to the Hebron Yeshiva at age 12. And he went. No, it was already moved to Yerushalayim. It had just moved to Yerushalayim. 29 with the riots, right? Oh, it affected him deeply, by the way, which is why he single-handedly conquered Hebron. The Hebron riots, the massacre and the evil of it left a huge impression upon him about what the Arabs had done. And it shattered within him any...
We had a victim in Harbaker.
Really?
Yes.
What happened?
Oh yeah, they mutilated him.
Someone in Lawrence who was in the yeshiva and cut off his finger.
Anyway, so Reb Goren goes at age 12 and he wants to be part of the yeshiva in Hebron, and he goes and says, what do you think about me being in the yeshiva? He says to the Rosh Yeshiva, he goes, don't ask me, ask the Bachrim. And the Bachrim were laughing. They said, what is this, a yeshiva katana? What is this, what is the babysitters here? He says, test me on anything. And the Rosh Yeshiva tested him and accepted him. At age 12.
Who was the Rosh Yeshiva?
At age 16, I'm not sure which Rosh Yeshiva tested him. Could have been a number of them. I'll have to get back to it. It was one of the Rosh Yeshivas of Hebron. Haskell, Bromsky maybe. In any case, so he was a super genius in Torah by the time he was age 16. However, the Arab riots had already broken out between 29 and 31, right? About the British White Paper, and it was dangerous. And as it came close to the era of the end of the mandate, there was terrible danger. And they said that the Jordanians wanted to come with tanks and conquer Yerushalayim, western Yerushalayim, all of Yerushalayim. And then he had been manning, when the Haggadah organized, he kind of said, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to volunteer a night for the defense. Because just out of principle. And he had a post with a gun. He learned how to shoot. He was an excellent marksman. And he had a post where he just stood there, like Ammunition Hill, and they aimed a gun at the Jordanians, on the Jordanian Legion. You know what the Jordanian Legion was? It was a massive army. And very well equipped and very well trained. And there's a little gun. And no matter what they said to him, he wouldn't leave his post. So finally, when he was asked, he kind of got drafted in to be like a rabbi, even though there wasn't an official position yet, because who was going to kasher the kitchens? I know, Ben Gurion, to his credit, wanted a Jewish army. And therefore he said, we're not going to have a separate Haredi divisions today. We're not going to have separate Haredi divisions. We're going to have one army, and it's going to conform. It'll have to make rules that'll be acceptable to everyone, so there has to be somebody to make it kosher. So Goren schlepped all the yeshiva boys out of every yeshiva to go and kasher the kitchens. So he became the rabbi before there was an official rabbinic position, okay? But here's what happened. They had word that the Jordanians were going to be coming Motzei Shabbos or early Sunday. The only way with tanks, and the only way to stop tanks is what? How do you stop a tank? If you don't have any guns, what will stop a tank?
Dynamite.
No, they had no dynamite, they had no nothing.
Lying on the floor.
They had shovels.
Kids.
That's right. You dig a big enough hole, and the tanks will not be able to proceed because it'll just be right. So the word was out that the Jains were coming, and they needed every single available pair of hands on Shabbos to dig the ditches. Here was Erev Shabbos. He's running around trying. His own psak was Pikuach Nefesh. You do whatever you have to do, certainly to dig a ditch, which even in that case, by the way, not necessarily Issa D'Oraisa, because you don't really want, well, it's not a question. It's a little interesting halakha question, but he went to Rabbi Dushinsky. You know Dushinsky? He's like, over here in bed, that was the big grand. That was the big grand. He's the leader of all the Hasidim. He said to me, "Give me your people. We need to dig trenches." He says, "What are you talking about? I can't tell my people to look at Chal Shabbos. What are you, crazy?" He goes, "Okay, if you won't give me permission, then sign on this piece of paper that all the Jews that die because of the Jordanian invasion, the blood is on your head." So he said, "No way am I signing that." She said to him, "Listen, go do what you have to do, but just keep me out of it." Go do what you have to do, just keep me out of it. Because he says, I can't, look for political reasons, I can't tell them, but I'm not willing to accept the responsibility either for all these people that are going to die if this doesn't happen. P.S. All the yeshiva boys agreed. They dug the trenches on that Shabbos. The Jordanians came. First couple tanks fell into the ditches. They turned around and went. So he single-handedly, engineered the team that would dig.
He was still a teenager then?
No. Remember, he was 12 years old in like 1930. So by then, what was he? 47. He was 30. He was about 30. Okay. And then it's just an incredible story of how, at Ben Gurion's request, and also the request of the chief rabbis, although the chief rabbis gave him a big hard time. That was later, because he wanted to be independent of the chief rabbi. Can you imagine the chutzpah? He said, whatever the chief rabbis rule has nothing to do with the army. I'm in charge of the stock of the army. Because he didn't want to make it political appointments and cronyism, and also that the halacha, he tried to find a way that the objectives of the army and the objectives of halacha could mesh. You know what I'm saying? And he also had to work out brand new halachos that didn't exist before, the laws of armed warfare. The halachos of armed warfare. Go figure that out. He had to collect the whole Shas. He said he learned 77 dapim of Shas every single day. He was an ultimate genius. But in any case, his courage really was, and what he accomplished was mind-boggling. But come to 67 and he had a driver. He was already appointed chief rabbi for a number of years, since the 50s, and he was a high-ranking, he was a brigadier general, very high-ranking. So he had a driver, and he would go, first of all, his main thing was getting all the bodies out of anybody who was killed with great courage, and went into enemy lines and did all kinds of crazy things. Also, in terms of bringing the army to kashrus, Ariel Sharon was head of paratroopers, and he said that we don't need kashrus because there's not one single religious soldier here, so keep your kashrus, leave us alone. So he argued with him, he said, but, so Ariel Sharon finally said, if you give me one paratrooper that keeps kashrus, I'll agree. So he says, okay, I'm signing up for the paratroopers first.
Wow.
And he started jumping out of airplanes.